Hey everybody, Phil here for another edition of Phil vs. Solver, a series where I go through hand histories submitted by viewers, talk about what I would have done. We look at a solver, see what a computer would have done. We draw some kind of conclusions. So without further ado, this hand that was sent in, our hero is in the big blind. Just kidding. This hand that was sent in, our hero is in middle position, playing 6 max no limit. He faces an under the gun raise to 2.2. He 3-bets to 7.4 big blinds, and it's folded around to the big blind, who cold 4-bets to 21 big blinds. Under the gun opener calls and our hero calls. So we've got a 4-bet pot with some very tight ranges. I think right off the bat, we have to consider folding to this 4-bet. It's not as if it's like hijack, cutoff button. This is under the gun 1 big blind. So I think ranges are gonna be pretty tight. Our hero has pocket 10s. I think it's a close decision. We'll see what the solver has to say in a bit. Flop is Queen Jack 7 rainbow. And the big blind checks, which is interesting. So big blind's 4-betting range should be aces and kings for value, maybe queens. I guess you don't go with as much of a polarized range here in the big blind. You just go linear and you just 4-bet whatever your best X% of hands that you're not folding. We'll see that in the solver shortly. It goes check, check on Queen Jack 7 rainbow. Turn 8, we turn a gut shot. It goes check, check again. And river brings the 10 of spades. The turn was the 8 of spades. So we have 3 spades by the river. Big blind bets near pot, probably pot minus rake. And our hero decides to call. So let's go through it one at a time in the solver. I can tell you my initial impressions right now are that pre-flop is close, flop and turn are standard, and the river is probably a bad call. But let's go through it. All right, so first of all, taking a look at the big blind's 4-betting range. It's got queens plus 100% of the time, ace king 100% of the time, king queen suited and ace queen suited. Then it's got a smattering of other suited aces, some suited kings, most jacks, and then occasionally some weaker pocket pairs. So this is a board that's going to hit this range really, really hard. Almost always the big blind's going to have either ace king or a pair or set, like top pair or set. So not a great board for us. As far as our pre-flop play, yeah, so 10s should be folding most of the time. It sneaks in a couple calls. So I was right that that's close, and I think a close fold. Obviously, do what you want. It's very close in the solver, and make a read on your opponent. 7 of hearts. All right, so the first thing that I'll note is that big blinds, with that really strong range that I talked about, the big blind's supposed to c-bet effectively 100% of the time. And using a lot of small sizings, obviously the SPR is relatively low. You don't need to go that big to get a lot of money in. When the big blind checks, we're already in kind of a part of the game tree that you don't, like in practice, in practice we got to it. I don't think we should get to it. I think if I were the big blind, I would just c-bet everything. In position, if it does face a check, I mean, it does some betting with 10s, it mostly checks, like almost exclusively checks. So that looks good. We have the 8 of spades on the turn. Now the big blind does a lot of checking. Well, let's look at our pre-flop calling range. We don't, I guess, actually. So one thing that's interesting here is that 10s are supposed to fold a lot, but 8s and 7s call a lot. If we 3-bet with them, 6s as well if we 3-bet with them. So the lower pocket pairs do call. I think the reason for that is when you hit a set with a 10, there's very often going to be a straight draw for your opponent. They're like ace, king, ace, queen. And the lower pair, like they're never going to have a 7 in their hand almost. So your outs are very live there. And when the 7's on the flop, they're not going to have flop to straight with their Broadway hands. They check turn. Where there were 10s, we mostly check again. All looks good. Now we get to the river, which is the 10 of spades. So flush comes in. You're not going to see a ton of flushes, but you'll see some. But ace king is such a big part of out of position's range. So the really interesting thing here is that out of position is on the river. The big blind's effectively checking its whole range, which surprised me a little bit because of the prevalence of ace king. But I guess it's got like 25% straights or better. They've got a lot of sets, and then some over pairs, some top pair, some second pair. And we have more flushes, more straights, as we have some ace king as well, and 9-9, more flushes, more straights. Okay, so our range in position, we don't have the sets because we would have bet flop or turn with the set basically always. And we don't have the 2 pair for the same reason. We don't have over pairs almost ever. We have a few ace combos. So then we're basically, either straight plus or like top pair down. And then very occasionally we have a set, and mostly it's a set of tens like we do have here. So we can see what happens when solver faces a big bet with tens. It mixes call and fold. It's mostly calling. It's calling like 60, 70% of the time, 70% of the time. The reason I don't like it, and I'm sticking with that, as I look at the range here, you have to figure out what out of position is bluffing with, essentially. I don't think any kind of reasonable player is going to be value betting worse than a set of tens here on the river for full pot when the one card straight gets in and the flush gets in. If we're going to call here, we need them to be bluffing with something, and their cold 4-bet range just has like a jack or better. So ace jack suited is the one hand that I can think of where I would expect out of position to bluff. And they do, I can't really look in the solver at, which hands the solver bluffs, because the solver's just not betting. So I just have to like look through the solver's range and then use my mind. So the only potential bluff here that makes any sense to me is like ace jack suited. There are a few like ace 5, ace 4, ace 6, 7, 8 suited combos that played this way. I feel like people mostly bet those at some point before now. But if not, they might bet them now. Rather, I think they would bet them now if they got here this way. But first of all, I think a lot of humans skip those 4-bet bluffs, but they don't skip the, ace king suited 4-bet bluffs, or 4-bets rather. They don't skip the ace king 4-bets, but they skip some of the ace 5 suited 4-bets. They skip some of the ace jack suited 4-bets even. So I just think there are not a lot of bluffing candidates here. And I mean, as we saw in the solver, ace king and basically everything's supposed to bet the flop. But if we're thinking about what our opponent is reasonably likely to check on this flop, ace king is a really common, like obvious candidate for what would check. I think ace king and once again ace jack. I think when people cold 4-bet with ranges this tight, maybe they do just give up if they have the ace 5 suiteds, but I don't know. People like to take a stab and hope something good happens. Like hope your opponent folds 10s or 9s. So I think that for all the ace king combos that our opponent's going to get here with, which we can't really look to the solver for, because the solver wouldn't have checked flop in the first place, basically. But ace king's one of the more obvious checks, and so if our opponent has checks, there are going to be a lot of ace king combos in there. To balance all those out, you need enough ace jack suited bluffs. Basically, I guess what I want to drive home here is that there are so many points throughout this hand where our opponent in the big blind could make the mistake of skipping bluffs. So it starts pre-flop. They might skip some ace 5 suited bluffs. They might skip the ace jack suited 4-bets. Then next on the flop, they might bet actually some of the ace 5 suited bluffs. They might bet ace jack just to make it easier to play. Obviously, they might bet ace king as well. But then on the river now, once again, like on the turn, it's nothing really gets shaved off. But on the river, they might not bet ace jack. They might not, they probably bet ace 5. But they might not bet ace jack here. And I don't think they're going to bet ace queen as a bluff, which they probably need to. Yet, ace king makes perfect sense. So I just think there are so many combos of ace king, and to balance those out with bluffs, you need a lot of these kind of fringe hands to bluff. Because even if we have, like, let's say we have the 16 combos of ace king, all 4 combos of ace jack suited, which I guess 3 because one's on the board. And then we have all 4 combos of ace 5 suited as well. Well, one of those became a flush. So now we actually add a few more value combos because of the nut flushes that might have played this way. But we'll just say one more. So we have ace king, which is 16 combos, plus ace 5 of spades. So we have 17 value combos. And then there are 6 bluff combos. And we need to get those bluffs. If we have 17 value, we need to get those bluffs up to 9 or higher. And we only have 6 bluffing candidates. Maybe if we also do this with all of our ace 8 suiteds, like I don't think somebody's cold 4-betting every suited ace, but let's say the ace 4 suiteds as well, then that's 18 value combos. And now we've finally got up to 9 bluff combos possible if our opponent plays all of those at equal frequency to each other. So it's really reaching, I think, to have our opponent bluff enough, like to even have the candidates to bluff enough, and then they have to bluff with them all the time. Whereas if our opponent gets here on the river with ace king, they're just going to bet, obviously. So yeah, I think this should be a fold. Solver thinks it's a mix, and now we get to see the results. All right, drum roll. Ace king clubs for our villain, which is, you know, what we're going to see. I think 80% of the time, roughly. We need to be good half the time to call, or rather, we need to be good a third of the time to call. But I think 80 to 90% of the time we're going to see ace king, maybe higher. So I think our hero should have folded this river. I think pre-flop is close, maybe a fold, but make a read on your opponent. And hopefully you found that helpful. This is the first one where the solver was not very helpful because we went down a branch of the game tree that it doesn't really go down. But I still enjoyed it. If you have some hands to submit, you could send them in to askphilgalfond@gmail.com. And if you don't, then you don't have to email me anything. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.